appreciate you meeting with us today.
You bet, you bet.
You know, just kind of walk us through, you know, how a producer or how someone was to use one of these sticks and how they're a valuable tool on estimating forage and kind of what they have. You know, you can kind of look across the field and see how much grass is there, but it can be kind of deceiving depending on densities and the amount of forage and the diversity of forage that's there. So if you don't mind, kind of get some time here and show us how to use one of these grazing sticks.
We've been using these sticks for many, many years, as a lot of you know, and there's lots of ways to estimate forage, but they're just a handy tool to measure what's out here and then go from there. Probably one tip I always say is you want to pick an average of that area. Obviously stay away from old bale rings, watering points, things like that, because you're trying to decide how much forage is here, not win a contest that you got the most forage. So, and so the first thing is actually measuring it. So it's a yardstick, which is pretty handy, and we're going to go through and, you know, area you want to graze, like if I was going to put a strip across here, go predetermine if I'm going to go every second step or whatever. But before I do that, we'll talk about how to measure it here first, because when you put this thing down, and we get this a lot, or don't get this a lot, but we talk about it a lot. Obviously, you don't want to just be picking that up and measuring the top. We want to be talking about how much forage feed is here, and that'd be kind of cheating to pull that up. So you're kind of looking at where you, I always like to say where the numbers start disappearing and where you start feeling resistance with your hand. However, if this isn't really laid over bad, but if you've got some that's really laid over, when you're out there, you may want to pull it up a little, because that'll be deceiving. It's a lot denser in there than if it's gotten really laid over. So sometimes you may want to do something like that to get an idea. But in this case, you know, I'd probably call that about 8-inch average on that measurement. So that's what you're looking for, is kind of 7-8 inch in that area, in how to measure it, what you're looking at. And it's not rocket science. You don't need to make it difficult. But so then I'll say every second step, and ideally when you're doing any sampling, try not to look down before you put the stick down, because you're going to guide it without even meaning to guide it. So I'll just go across here. We'll do, just for sake of time right now, I'm only going to do about 5, but you probably should, you know, if you got a big area, you should take several, and depending on how good your memory is, if you want to write them down or not. So we'll start with 8 there. So here's a good example. This is really laid down here, so I do want to pull that up a little. Otherwise, I'd only had about 3 or 4 inches. I'm going to call that a 6. I don't think I'll count the bull nettle. That'd be kind of misleading. But this is probably going to be more like a 5 in that area. I'm going to call that a 5. I'll call it a 6. Let's go with a 6. So we had a 8. See, watch your memory. 8, 5, and a 6, and a 6. All right. So we got 6 inches average of height there. Now, that doesn't tell you a whole lot yet, but on the table and in the grazing schools, we go over the same type of stuff. But on these grazing sticks, and we just updated them this year, everything you need is on here. The equations, the average yield, and intake, and all this. So on the stick, there's estimated dry matter per inch per acre. And this is off of different yield data and stuff we developed through the years. So we've got that, and then the different species as you rotate that stick. So we got tall fescue with nitrogen, tall fescue and legumes, brome grass legumes, orchard grass legumes, mixed pasture, and then the warm season grasses. You'll notice also there's, on the density, is it low density, medium density, high density? That's where we talk about, get out there and look down. How much bare ground compared to plants are you seeing? How dense is that field? And you got to determine where you're at here. And don't lose any sleep. Let's say you're trying to decide if it's medium or high. Well, the low part of high in this case is 450. The high part of low is 450, or medium's 450. So don't fret over it. Just go with one and go with it. So this is pretty dense stand, at least the part we measured. So I'm probably going to go with about in that high density area, say that 450. I hardly ever am going to go much more than that. I'd rather build a fudge factor in there. A lot of times it's going to fall in this area here to be safe. One other comment, do I go tall fescue or tall fescue with nitrogen? Bottom line is there's just a little bit of difference there. So, or you can, if you're just not sure, you come on down here to mixed pasture and it can help you out. Probably the biggest thing is if you do get into the natives, the tall native warm season grasses. Now look at the difference in per inch yield. So you want to really watch that. But let's just use a 450 on this. So we said we had 6 inches. I mean, and then that yields 450 pounds of dry matter per inch. So 6 times that is if I was smart, I would have picked 400, but sorry. So if we got 450 times 6, that means we got 2,700 pounds of dry matter. Now that's from the ground up because we measured all of it, right? What we always want to remember is we don't want to use it all. Pretty good rule of thumb to go by. I'm sure a lot of folks have heard that old take half, leave half rule. Still a good, during the growing season, still a good one to go with. During that grazing period, when the plants are growing, 50%. Just a good rule of thumb that's been around forever. Let's stick with it. If I'm doing this for winter stockpile, where I'm not concerned about the regrowth, now I'm probably going to use 70%. I'll use a little more of it because I'm not worried about that regrowth. And both of those are on here. The factors are on the stick that you can find for reference if you forget. But I, when in doubt, use 50%. And there's even some variations on this stick if you want to look at that even closer. So if we're saying 50% times our 2,700 pounds, that means we got 1,350 pounds of available forage. That's where I like to write things down. So we got 1,350 pounds of available forage we can get in their belly. We don't want to take the other half, ideally, that grazing period. All right, so we figured out how much we got per acre. That's per acre. Now we got to think about how much they need. So the intake on this, the intake rates are also on this stick. Forage intake rates by whatever the animal stage is in right now, which would be a lot different than if you're averaging for the year. Now you're figuring out today, are they lactating, are they dry, whatever. So we're going to say they're lactating beef cow, 3% of body weight, and we're going to cheat and say it's a 1,000-pound cow, which doesn't exist. So that makes it easy right now. So that's 30 pounds a day per head. So now you got to decide what you're after. Are you trying to decide how many head I could put in this field? Do you have a set number of head, and how long this field would last them? Or do I want a strip that'll last them a day? So that's what, it's either going to be time, space, or numbers. And those are the 3 things we can adjust as grazers. Normally, the numbers isn't too adjustable with a beef cow operation. It's more the time or space. So let's say we want to strip this for a day. We want to give them a strip for a day, because stockpiling, that's a lot of where you're going to use this. So it might be a daily move, might be a 2-day move, but let's just say we're going to move them for a day. So we got 1,350 pounds per acre in that deal, and we want to find out what it'll last them for a day. Let's say we've got, let's say 30 head. We'll just use 30 head times 30 pounds. So we got 900 pounds we need for a day, okay? So based on 30 head times 30 pounds a day, we need 900 pounds of dry matter forage for that herd for a day. We just said we had 1,350 pounds. So if we want to find out how big a strip, how big of an acreage we need to last them a day, if they need 900, we got 1,350. We take that 900, divide it by 1,350. It'd be 0.67 acres. All right, what does that tell you? Doesn't tell you diddly squat, does it? On the stick, I tell everybody, one of the first things I had to learn with this job is how many square feet in an acre. You need to burn that into your brain, 43,560 square feet in an acre. On the stick, we put it on there, so it's a good reference. So if I need 0.67 acres, I need to convert that to square feet. So we take 0.67 times 43,560. So that means I need 29,185 square feet to last those 30 head a day. All right, now what does that tell me? Ideally, like in this pasture, it goes, the fence is just over the hill there, and then it's behind us here. We're at the end of it, behind us here, and then the other end, the other side over there at those trees. Well, I know it's 480 feet across there because this is one of my fields. So ideally, you know how wide your permanent field paddocks are. That really makes it easy now. So if I needed 29,185 square feet, I divide it by my 480. That means 60 feet. I need a 60-foot wide strip. Now here's another tip. So how big's a person's step? Somebody might argue with me, but there's no man alive that takes a 3-foot step. And a regular step's always going to be more accurate than a pace. Mine are 2.6. Figure out how big your steps are. So if I need 60 feet and I divide it by 2.6, I need 23 steps. So I'll go back there, step it off, put me a tread-in post, or some guys, I haven't done this on this place, but if you know how far apart your posts are, you can go so many posts, you're there. So then you've got a strip to last them a day based on those numbers. On the other hand, let's say you wanted to give them a 3-day deal. Well, just multiply that width times 3 to last them 3 days. Probably the last thing I like to point out is, let's say you do that with your first strip out here. You come out here the next day and they're out of grass. You didn't really have a wreck, it was just a 1-day grazing. Adjust this width or adjust the time. Those things we can adjust. That's part of that flexibility we always talk about on grazing. But this can really help you start getting your eye set. If you use it quite a bit, you probably can go out here and look at this, say, I probably got about 8-inch average, 6-inch average, 350 pounds, and figure out how long it did it. I'd throw one other thing I'd do about this time of year if I'm truly gonna, I'd custom graze. So how much grass I got left before I send them home. You can go over all your pastures, measure them. You can calculate about how much feed you got left on your place, how many days it's going to last. You know when you're going to run out of feed, or for drought, you know when you're going to run out of feed, so you can either sell before everybody else does or get some hay ahead of time. So it can be a pretty handy tool for a lot of things. So I hope that helps.